This is Desi. Just wanted to tell you, you see, we're not as young as we used to be. In fact, now we're more Jungian than ever. Carl Jung gave us a gift of understanding of the basic archetypal images inside humans.
We need more understanding of human nature, because the only real danger that exists is man himself. He is the great danger, and we are pitifully unaware of it.
Human beings have an external awareness and an internal awareness. We are guided by archetypal internal images. There are good and evil impulses in all of us. And basically we have these impulses that we are born with, that come to us from nature and from nurture as well.
We know nothing of man, far too little. His psyche should be studied, because we are the origin of all coming evil.
We need to study the psychology of man to learn more about this and to understand evil. And evil comes from too much greed, anger, delusion, false belief, and arrogance. All these different principles coming to us from religion as well as from life and from philosophy, psychology. And Carl Jung told us that to confront a person with his own shadow is to show him the light. One does not become enlightened by images of just light, but by making the darkness light. We have to shine conscious light into our unconscious darkness to make the unconscious conscious. And until we do, it will direct our lives, and it can produce evil. We can justify any type of war, weapons, hurting people, killing people. You see the good, and then there's bad. And these different types of crimes will never know what happened, who did it, why. We have to understand and face that all of this happens. There is goodness and evil within all of us. We must address our own evils of greed, arrogance, hate, and delusions of false belief. We have to be able to address this and understand the archetypal images that drive us, that make us different. There's incredible diversity in the human being. We are not all the same. Incredible diversity. And most people are born with different innate instincts to care for the self or to care for others. Conflict, right or wrong, loyalty to the tribes, or loyalty to your own intellect, respect for authority, respect for rebellion, purity, laughter, fear, vision, optimism, pessimism, liberal, conservative, hero, psychopath. All of these different things we are going to now explore in our series of awareness based on the Jungian archetypes.
The child is not born tabula rasa, as one assumes. The child is born as a high complexity with existing determinants that never waver through the whole life.
These basic personality types that we refer to as archetypes might appear to be genetic, but actually they're more epigenetic. They're not of the DNA. You see, because we find that identical twins with exactly the same chemical DNA, they have different fingerprints. And if we look, we can see that DNA is not just everything, and that this factor of personality can be different in twins. So it is not related to the DNA. It's more epigenetic.
That gives the child his character already in the earliest childhood. A mother recognizes an individuality of her child. And so if you observe carefully, you see the tremendous difference even in very small children. And these peculiarities express themselves in every way. So
in our series, we'll be exploring different ideas of how people can learn to communicate, even then they are at different poles. You see that the belief structures of what people are comes from an internalization of an idea of the archetype that comes to us from different images. As new archetypes are being born, new ideas given to us from art, movies, culture, things that are growing inside. They help to touch our hearts and touch our minds. And then they help to grow as we identify and build human relationships and ideas from them.
First, the peculiarities express themselves in all childish activities.
We grow up with these ideas deep inside us that come out and capture. And there's good and bad. As they once said, thinking makes it so.
The way in which a man should behave is given by an archetype. And therefore, you see, the primitives tell such stories. A great deal of education goes through storytelling.
We get constructs, social constructs, the way a man should be. Leonardo da Vinci actually was found out that he was a transsexual. That deep inside, he actually had both sexes inside. And he captured that genius because of that ability to see both sides. And it was that that allowed him to express that. And the idea of what is a man, or what his man should be, genetically, society. Well, basically, as we understand, what is a woman, what is a man, what is our ideas of who is submissive, who is dominant, how should a person be? Because this all judgment is imposed onto us. And we start to learn different ideas. And we start to blend into the dance of life based on ideas of what we should or shouldn't be, sometimes ignoring how we really are inside.
What is it in your unconscious that makes you wrong?
What is it that makes you whole? Well, when you can bring the two sides together, as they flirt with coming together, the conscious, the unconscious, but when they start to merge and start to become as one and act as one, and one can see the other and the other can see the other, then we have the blend and the beauty of blending and jumping into the unconscious like a deep well.
We don't know our unconscious personality. We have hints, we have certain ideas, but we don't know it really. Nobody can say where man ends. That is the beauty of it, you know.
We try to learn from machines, and they can only give us an estimate. Some of them fail in understanding.
It's very interesting. The unconscious of man can reach God knows where. There we are going to make discoveries.
Such machines as the Eductor can help us to understand. As we start to come to grips on understanding and accepting what we are, at that deep level, the good, the bad, the shadow, the anima, the archetypes, as we start to explore man from the outside of what happens in reality to the inside, what happens in the internal reality, which is just as much a fact. The dream states, as we start to open up the ideas of dream and start to look at people's true feelings, and they come to know conscious, unconscious, beneath the structure of our society, etc., as we start to learn more about the depths of the human being and the depths of the soul.
Follows a pattern. Or the behavior of any bird or insect follows a pattern, and that is the same with us. Man has a certain pattern that makes him specifically human.
Humans follow a pattern from inside and outside, just like sports. Sports have a set of rules, a set of behavior, how you have to be. And inside we have our own type of epigenetic material determining who we are inside. So we start to understand the two sides of our nature and to look at the conscious and the unconscious, the dark and the light, coming to understand the rules.
We are only deeply unconscious of these facts because we live all by our senses and outside of ourselves. If a man could look into himself, he would discover it. And when a man discovers it, in our days, he thinks he's crazy. And it may be crazy.
When a man looks inside and finds his own internal dance, the blend of who is conscious and unconscious come together. Yes, we appear to be crazy. We appear to be disjointed from society when we allow ourselves to get in touch with who we are, and then learn the conscious and the unconscious come together.
You see people, you see houses, you see the sky, you see tangible objects, but when you observe yourself within, you see moving images, a world of images, generally known as fantasies.
And the computer is offering us a new world of learning, of archetypes, iconic idea.
Yet these fantasies are facts. It is a fact that a man has such and such a fantasy.
The internal world is a fact to that person. And there is things called shared dreams. And basically, as we dig into our deep personality, we start to find out that there is factual events happening here. Factual events that can actually imply and tell us about the future of our reality, external reality, from our internal dreams.
And it is such a tangible fact, for instance, that when a man has a certain fantasy, another man may lose his life.
Yes, a man can lose his life when one person's fantasy, one person's inner desires, drives him through greed, arrogance, hate, false beliefs. That shadow within can come out, and certain people, it can be harmful to others, harmful to self. Basically, this is something we need to explore to prevent.
And it is such a tangible fact, for instance, that when a man has a certain fantasy, another man may lose his life. A bridge is built. These houses were all fantasies. Everything you do here, all of the houses, everything was fantasy to begin with.
An internal fantasy can drive us towards good things, can touch our hearts to help others, to help society, to help things to grow. We can find ways to look within and touch art and perception and create and be able to communicate health and happiness, sharing and caring. This is the other side of what art and internal reality can bring.
Fantasy is not nothing. It is, of course, not a tangible object, but it is a fact nevertheless. It is, say, a form of energy, despite the fact we can't measure it. It is a manifestation of something.
The computer offers us a very interesting way to open doors to this internal reality.
And that is a reality that is just a reality as, for instance, the peace treaty of Versailles or something like that. It is no more, you can't show it. But it has been a fact.
Money, as an example, has no real value. It's only a perceived value of how you can possibly spend it. In nature, money has no value whatsoever. Love, happiness, equality, freedom, all basic ideas that you cannot touch. They're not concrete. They're basically feelings. And yet, we die for these things. We die for love, happiness, freedom. The internal world does drive us. It does put us into positions where we risk everything, where we express everything. In fact, more of our lives are guided by internal impulses than external impulses. But both have to be used and not ignored. Now let's look at the archetype. An idea.
Archetype is a force, it has an autonomy. It can suddenly seize you. It is like a seizure.
Yes.
So, for instance, falling in love at first sight, that is such a case.
The face, male, female, can touch. If it's symmetrical, if it's beautiful, it has the shape and the texture. Basically, it can launch 1,000 ships, and it can touch the hearts and minds, and produce an internal image, an internal compulsion, an internal desire, an internal awareness. that cannot be ignored, basically that drives impulses, shapes lives, and produces the most tightest of bonds. As some people will say, that love is the bonding force of the universe, but it is built on just a base idea of relationships and biology.
You see, you have a certain image in yourself without knowing it of the woman, of the woman. Yes. Now you see that girl, or at least a good imitation of your type, and instantly you get a seizure, and you're gone.
Instantly, upon gazing at the right image, it can touch you, as we can see that this happens and people are driven by it. And then basically the perception of bonding, the perception of unifying, the perception of the mind, as we then are drawn into a situation of love, of desire, of an internal drive to fulfill an external complex. And as we learn more about the internal qualities of the person, of humanity, of the mind, then we will learn more about the external world, how to control it, how to live in it, how to operate, and how we can share and care as we dare to share and care and develop compassion rather than bigotry and hatred.
And afterwards, you may discover that it was a hell of a mistake. Or, you see, a man is quite capable, he's intelligent enough to see that that woman of his choice, as one says, not no choice, he has been captured.
And all things change, and even a lovely face that captures one can then later drive a stake through the heart, through betrayal or through other impulses. And that the human spirit must recognize that there are highs and lows. There's happiness and depression, and you cannot have one without the other.
For God's sake, doctor, help me to get rid of that woman. He can't. He's like clay in her fingers. And that is the archetype. That is the so-called archetype of the animal. Yes. He thinks it is all his soul. You know.
The deep drives of the internal world can be so incredibly difficult, so intense, so hard to release, driving us.
All seek their own existence and to assure their existence against that complete atomization into nothingness or into meaninglessness. Man cannot stand a meaningless life.
Yes, thank you, Carl Jung. Thank you greatly for the work that you've done, showing us the instinct of how we need to really look. And basically, here, we need to give you credit where credit is due. So Carl Jung, who developed the idea of the archetypes of personality. And we need to look into this more deeply and to understand. He coined the word synchronicity, the idea that things happen in a joint entwinement. He taught us about the collective unconscious, another expression of the entwinement entanglement that we now understand with quantum physics. He made Swiss education charters, and that's how we got to develop immune. Now, as we look into these ideas, we have to recognize that there is an evil ultra-rich. And they use these archetypes, they use them against us. And they help to develop ideas that are profit over people, so that they can sell. We have to recognize that people give into this, and that when somebody takes a job for the evil ultra-rich, then they're guided. Big sugar, big tobacco, big pharma, big oil, war machine. So many corporations that actually are killing people in the execution of profit over people. Evil greed. And we have to then take a stand against this and learn about ourselves and recognize that silence in the face of evil is itself evil. Evil succeeds when good people do nothing. We must do something to help stop the evil rich, the evil ultra-rich, from enslaving us all. We have to be able to do this, and this is how we've come together with a lot of our different movies to help to teach you about the Goliaths who lie, the corporations of death, and basically help to break free the chains and recognize how we can really deal with this and start to understand the human condition. And Desiree Dubonnet, that's me, and I'm trying to help you to understand and develop more ideas. So I hope that I've touched your hearts with a little bit, and I welcome you to our new course on learning about the Jungian archetypes.